Valentina's shoulder slammed into the doorframe as she staggered backward, the tray of wine glasses shattering against the marble floor in a spray of glass and Merlot. "Pick it up," Bianca hissed, already turning away, her heels clicking a rhythm of contempt across the hall. "And don't make a scene at my engagement dinner tomorrow, Valentina. I mean it. Or something that doesn't embarrass me." Valentina's hands were shaking as she dropped to her knees among the shards, blood beading thin and bright on her palm before she even registered the cut. 29 years old, on the floor of the house she'd worked in for 6 years, picking up glass her own cousin had thrown at her feet. "You don't have to let her talk to you like that." The voice came from the shadow of the hallway. Low, rough at the edges, the kind of voice that made the air in the room feel thinner. Dante Rossi stood with one shoulder against the wall, sleeves rolled to the elbow, ink crawling from his wrist to somewhere past his collar. He hadn't moved to help her. He never rushed. But his eyes hadn't left her since the glass hit the floor. "She's family," Valentina said, not looking up. "Family says whatever they want. Family doesn't throw wine at you." He crouched, finally, close enough that she caught the smell of leather and cedar under something sharper. Gunpowder, maybe, from wherever he'd been before he came home tonight. He picked up a shard of glass between 2 fingers, turning it once. "You should sit down. You're bleeding." "I'm fine." "You're not." He set the glass down and reached for her hand before she could pull it back, pressing his thumb gently against the cut to stop the bleeding. His grip was steady in a way that made her breath catch, the same hands that men in this city whispered about in fear. Careful now, deliberate, like she was something worth being careful with. If you've ever had a family member make you feel small in a room full of people who were supposed to love you, stay with this one. Subscribe now, because Valentina is about to stop staying quiet. She pulled her hand back anyway. "I need to clean this up before your mother sees." "Forget the glass." Dante stood, offering his hand to help her up. She hesitated a full second before she took it. What did she mean, tomorrow? Valentina's jaw tightened. She hadn't meant to say the words out loud. Not really. They just slipped out an hour ago while she was scrubbing the kitchen counter alone, exhausted, furious. "I need a boyfriend by tomorrow." A joke to no one. Or so she'd thought. "It's nothing. Bianca's engagement dinner. The whole family will be there. My mother already texted me 11 times about not showing up alone again." She laughed, but it came out hollow. "It's fine. I'll survive it like I survive every year." "You said you needed a boyfriend by tomorrow." Her head snapped up. "You heard that. I hear everything in this house." Something shifted behind his eyes, not amusement exactly, something quieter. "It's kind of the job." Heat flooded her face so fast she had to look away, back down at the broken glass still scattered across the floor like something that mirrored exactly how she felt. "Forget I said it. It was stupid. I wasn't asking you for anything, Mr. Rossi. I know you weren't." He didn't leave. That was the strange part, the part that would keep her up half that night turning it over. Dante Rossi didn't linger in rooms. He arrived. He issued orders. He vanished into whatever business kept the lights burning in his study until 3 in the morning. He didn't crouch on kitchen floors picking up glass. He didn't hold anyone's hand a second longer than necessary. "What time," he said, "is the dinner?" Valentina blinked at him. "What? Tomorrow. What time does it start?" "Why does that matter?" "Because I'm going to need to clear my schedule." For a moment neither of them said anything, and the silence stretched long enough that Valentina could hear her own pulse in her ears, could feel the absurdity and the impossible hope of it collide somewhere in her chest. Dante Rossi, the man 3 rival families were too afraid to cross, the man whose name alone closed down entire city blocks, was standing in a hallway offering to walk into her cousin's engagement dinner as her date. "You don't owe me anything," she said quietly. "You don't have to fix this." "I'm not fixing anything." His voice dropped, and something in it made her chest ache in a way she didn't have a name for yet. "I'm choosing to be there. There's a difference." Before she could answer, the front door slammed open hard enough to rattle the chandelier above them. And Marco, Dante's second, breathless, blood on his collar that wasn't his own, burst into the hall. "Boss, we have a problem. The Costas know about tomorrow. They know about her." Dante didn't turn around right away. Valentina watched something in his shoulders go rigid, a stillness she recognized now as the calm before he did something violent. "Say that again," Dante said. "The Costas." Marco was still catching his breath, One hand braced against the doorframe. They know you've been coming around the maid. They know about tomorrow's dinner. Sal Costa's been asking questions about her family for 2 days. Where she lives when she's not here, who she's related to. What would hurt you worse than a bullet? Valentina's stomach dropped. Wait, what does any of this have to do with me? Neither man answered her. Dante's eyes had gone somewhere cold and far away, calculating. And for the first time since she'd known him, she saw something close to fear cross his face. Not for himself. Get her upstairs, Dante said. I'm standing right here, Valentina snapped, some of the old fire returning even through the confusion. Someone tell me what's happening. Right now. Marco glanced at Dante, who gave a single short nod, permission granted. 3 months ago, Marco said, we hit a Costa shipment coming through the harbor. Boss didn't want blood, just the product, but it went wrong. Sal's brother didn't walk away from it. Sal's been looking for a way to make it even ever since. He doesn't just want Dante dead. He wants him to watch something he loves die first. The word loves landed strangely in the hallway, and Valentina felt Dante's attention snap toward her, sharp, like he hadn't meant for that particular truth to arrive this way, this soon, in front of Marco with blood still drying on his collar. I'm a maid, Valentina said slowly, looking between them. I clean this house. I'm nobody to these people. You're not nobody, Dante said. Not to me. And that makes you a target whether either of us wanted it. If you think you know where this is going, drop a comment right now, because in about 30 seconds, everything you think you understand about Dante is about to change. How long? Valentina said, her voice quieter now. Have they known? Marco hesitated, which was answer enough. 2 days, Dante said finally. I found out 2 days ago. I've had men watching your mother's building since Tuesday. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you carrying this on top of everything else. Valentina felt her chest tighten, a strange collision of fury and something dangerously close to tenderness. You've had people watching my mother's building, and you didn't think that was something I needed to know? I think you needed one more day where your life felt like it still belonged to you, Dante said, and the honesty in it disarmed her more than any apology would have. I was going to tell you tonight, before Marco walked in. Well, congratulations, she said, arms wrapping around herself. You told me. Marco cleared his throat, clearly unused to being present for whatever this was between them. Boss, the dinner tomorrow. If the Costas knows she'll be there, publicly, with you. I know what it means. Dante's jaw ticked. It means Sal wants to make a move somewhere loud. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere he thinks I won't shoot first, because there'll be a room full of her family watching. Then don't go, Valentina said immediately. Don't come tomorrow. I'll go alone like I always do. I'll survive one more dinner, and you stay far away from me, and this whole mess disappears. Dante crossed the space between them in 3 strides, closer than he'd ever stood to her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. That's not going to happen. Dante, you think I'm going to send you into a room where a man like Sal Costa knows exactly where to find you, unprotected, because it's inconvenient for me to be there? His voice had dropped low, rough, and there was something underneath the anger that sounded almost like fear. I've buried men for less than what he's threatening to do to you. So what? You're going to walk into my cousin's engagement dinner as my date, while a war is about to start over me. Her voice cracked on the last word, the reality of it finally landing. That's insane. That puts everyone there in danger. My mother, my cousins, children, Dante. Which is why nobody at that dinner will know anything is wrong, Dante said. You'll have security in the room you won't even recognize as security. I'll be there as your date, exactly like you need, and nothing about tomorrow night changes except that Sal Costa is going to learn very quickly that touching you was the worst idea he's ever had. Marco shifted uncomfortably. Boss, with respect, if he's desperate enough to make a move in public, desperate men do unpredictable things. This isn't a guarantee of safety. This is a guarantee of a fight. Then we make sure we're the ones who finish it, Dante said, not breaking eye contact with Valentina. She searched his face, looking for the calculation, the ruthless businessman who ran half the city's underworld from a study 3 doors down from her bedroom. She didn't find him. What she found instead frightened her more. A man who looked like he'd already decided he would rather burn the whole night down than let anything happen to her. Why? She whispered. Would you do any of this for me? The question hung between them, unanswered, when the sound of glass breaking came from somewhere upstairs, followed immediately by Valentina's phone, buzzing violently on the counter behind her, her mother's name flashing across the screen at 11:40 at night, a time her mother never called. Valentina lunged for the phone before the second ring finished, some animal instinct already screaming that this wasn't a coincidence. "Mama." Her mother's voice came through ragged, breathless, wrong. "Valentina, there are men outside. 2 cars. They've been parked across the street for 20 minutes, and one of them just got out, and Valentina, he's looking right at the window." The line went dead. Not disconnected. Dead. The particular silence of a call that had been cut, not dropped. "Mama? Mama." Valentina's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone, and Dante was already moving, already barking orders at Marco in a tone that left no room for hesitation. "Get Enzo and Carlo to her mother's building now. Not in 10 minutes. Now." Marco was gone before Dante finished the sentence, boots pounding down the hall. "They're going to hurt her," Valentina said, and the words came out strangled, disbelieving, the kind of sentence a person says when their mind hasn't caught up to what their body already knows is true. "Because of me. Because of this. Look at me." Dante caught her face in both hands, tilting her chin up until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Nobody touches your mother. I promise you that. I have men 5 minutes from her building right now. You promised nobody would know about tomorrow either, and somehow Sal Costa knew before I did." The accusation landed harder than she meant it to, and she watched it cost him something. A flicker of guilt crossing features that rarely showed anything at all. "You're right," he said quietly. "I underestimated how fast he'd move. I won't make that mistake again." Comment below right now if you think Valentina should run from all of this, or if you think it's already too late for that. I want to know before batch 4. Her phone rang again. Unknown number this time. She answered with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. "Valentina." The voice was smooth, amused, a voice that had clearly practiced sounding pleasant while saying terrible things. "Sal Costa. I imagine Dante's told you nothing about me, which is rude of him, considering how much I know about you. Where is my mother?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Sleeping, actually. Peacefully. My men aren't animals. We're not interested in an old woman who scrubs floors for a living same as her daughter does. We're interested in what Dante Rossi is willing to trade to keep it that way." A pause, unhurried, cruel in its patience. "Be at the engagement dinner tomorrow. Both of you. Come exactly as planned. I have some things to say to Dante, and I think it's only fitting you're standing next to him when I say them." "Why are you doing this to people who have nothing to do with your war?" "Because Dante took something from me that I can't get back," Sal said, and for the first time something raw slipped through the practiced calm. "So I'm going to make sure he understands exactly what that feels like before this is over. Sleep well, Valentina. Big day tomorrow." The line clicked dead. Valentina lowered the phone slowly, staring at it like it might bite her again. "He has men watching my mother's building right now," she said. "He called to threaten me himself. This isn't business anymore, Dante. This is personal, and I'm standing in the middle of it because I made one stupid joke in an empty kitchen. This isn't your fault, isn't it?" Her voice broke on the question, 6 years of exhaustion and invisibility cracking open all at once. "I've spent 6 years in this house being careful, being quiet, doing my job, and going home and never once giving your world a single reason to notice I exist. And in one night, because of 5 words I said out loud when I thought no one was listening, my mother has men outside her window and a mafia boss knows my name. You didn't do this." Dante's voice hardened, not at her, but at the situation itself, at his own failure to see it coming. "Sal Costa has been looking for a way to hurt me for 3 months. If it hadn't been you, he would have found something else. Someone else. The only difference tonight, maid, is that I finally have a reason to burn his entire operation to the ground instead of just defending mine. That's supposed to comfort me? It's supposed to be honest." He stepped closer again, and this time she didn't step back. "I've spent 6 years watching you in this house, Valentina. Watching you work twice as hard as anyone else here and never once complain. Watching you eat lunch alone in the garden because Bianca made it clear you weren't welcome at the family table. I noticed you a long time before tonight. I just never had a reason good enough to say so." The confession landed in the space between them like something neither of them could take back now that it existed. Valentina's breath caught, anger and fear and something achingly tender colliding all at once. "You could have told me," she whispered. "Before all of this." "I know. Why didn't you?" "Because men like me don't get to want things like you without putting them in danger," Dante said. And for the first time she heard something that sounded almost like shame. "I was trying to protect you by staying away. Tonight proved I failed at that anyway." Upstairs, a door slammed. Footsteps, too many, too heavy, not belonging to anyone who lived in this house, began moving fast across the second floor, directly above their heads, directly toward the stairs. Dante's hand went to his waist before the first footstep hit the staircase, and Valentina realized with a cold jolt that he'd been carrying a weapon the entire night without her ever noticing. "Behind me," he said, voice dropped to something flat and lethal. "Now." She moved without arguing, pressing her back against the kitchen wall as three men came down the staircase. Not Costa men. She realized a beat later, watching Dante's shoulders drop half an inch. His own men, faces she recognized from the garage, from the perimeter of the property she'd walked past 1,000 times without ever really seeing. "Boss." The lead man was breathing hard. "We caught someone on the east wall. Costa's man, taking photos of the house." "Of her?" He nodded toward Valentina. He had a folder in his jacket. Photos of her going back weeks. "Grocery store. Bus stop. Her mother's building." The floor seemed to tilt under Valentina's feet. "Weeks," she repeated. "He's been watching me for weeks?" This wasn't a reaction to tonight, Dante said quietly, almost to himself, the pieces rearranging in real time. "This was already in motion before you ever said a word in that kitchen. He's been building a file on you since before I even knew what I felt." "That's not possible. Nobody knew there was anything between us." "There wasn't anything between us. Not really. Not until an hour ago." "Sal doesn't need something to be real," Dante said. "He just needs it to be useful. If he thought I'd developed feelings for the maid, that was already a weapon, whether either of us had acted on it or not. If this twist just made your stomach drop the way it made mine typing it, hit that like button, because batch 5 is where everything comes to a head." Valentina pressed her hand against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. "So this was never really about tomorrow's dinner. It was never really about me at all. I'm just leverage. A photograph in a folder." "Don't." Dante turned to face her fully, ignoring his men, ignoring the tension still thick in the room. "Don't you dare shrink yourself down to a photograph in a folder. You are not leverage. You are the reason I am standing in this kitchen instead of upstairs finishing paperwork like I do every other night of my life. That doesn't change what's happening." "No, it doesn't." He exhaled, and for a moment the mask of the controlled, dangerous man slipped, and underneath it she saw exhaustion and fear and something that looked almost like grief for a version of tonight that could have gone differently. "But it changes what I'm willing to do about it." He turned back to the man who'd brought the news. "Where's Costa's man now?" "Tied up in the East Wing. Waiting on you." "Good. I want to know everything in that folder. Every building, every route, everyone he's photographed near her. And I want a location on Sal Costa's actual whereabouts within the hour, not his usual restaurants. I want to know where he's sleeping tonight." The man nodded once and disappeared back up the stairs, the other two flanking behind him. The kitchen went quiet again, quiet in the particular way that follows violence being set into motion rather than violence already spent. Valentina slid down the wall until she was sitting on the cold tile floor, glass still scattered a few feet away, and put her face in her hands. Dante crouched in front of her without hesitation, the same way he had an hour ago, when this had all still seemed like it might just be about a cut on her palm. "I clean toilets for a living," she said, half laughing, half sobbing, the sound raw and disbelieving. 6 hours ago my biggest problem was that my cousin was going to humiliate me at dinner. Now there's a man tied up in your East Wing because he's been photographing my bus stop. I know how insane this sounds. Does it get better? Any of this? Or does it just get worse until one of us doesn't survive it?" Dante reached out, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that felt almost unbearable given everything happening around them. "It gets worse before it gets better. I won't lie to you about that. Sal isn't going to stop because we're prepared for him. If anything, tonight tells him his plan is already working, and men like him double down when they think they're winning. So what do? Tomorrow, we go to that dinner exactly like we planned," Dante said. Because if we don't, Sal wins without even having to try, and he'll come at your mother next, or your cousins, or anyone else he decides is soft enough to hurt. The only way through this is forward, with enough force behind us that he understands attacking you was the last mistake he gets to make. Valentina studied his face, the certainty in it, the quiet violence underneath the calm. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about ending this, Dante said, not flinching from the truth of it. However, that needs to happen. Before she could respond, Marco reappeared at the kitchen doorway, phone in hand, his expression grim in a way that made Valentina's stomach clench all over again. Boss, I got eyes on Costa's location like you asked. He hesitated, glancing at Valentina before continuing. He's not at his usual place tonight. He's 3 blocks from her mother's building. Sitting there, waiting. Dante was already moving before Marco finished the sentence, pulling his jacket from the back of a chair, voice dropping into the clipped rhythm of a man giving orders in his sleep. Get the car. Now. Enzo and Carlo stay on the building, but I want eyes on Sal directly, and I want them close enough to move the second he does. Boss, if you go there yourself. I'm not asking for a debate, Marco. Valentina pushed herself up off the floor, ignoring the ache in her knees. I'm coming with you. Both men turned to look at her like she'd suggested something insane, which, she supposed, she had. Absolutely not, Dante said. That's my mother sitting in that building with a man outside who wants to hurt her to punish you. I am not staying here folding napkins while you two decide what happens to her. Valentina, you told me an hour ago that you noticed me, that you've watched me for 6 years. Fine. Then look at me now and tell me you actually believe I'm the kind of woman who sits quietly in a kitchen while her mother's life is on the line. Her voice didn't shake this time. Something had hardened in her over the last hour. Some version of herself she hadn't known was still in there, buried under 6 years of being invisible. I'm coming. Dante stared at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Not just reluctant respect, but the particular ache of a man realizing the woman in front of him wasn't going to be protected by being hidden away. Stay in the car, he said finally. Whatever happens, you stay in the car until I come get you myself. Promise me that much. Fine. The car. They moved fast after that. Marco already on the phone barking coordinates. Dante checking the weapon at his waist with the practiced calm of a man who'd done this more times than Valentina wanted to imagine. The drive across the city passed in a blur of streetlights and silence. Valentina's hands twisted together in her lap, her mother's face flashing behind her eyes every time she blinked. If you've made it this far, drop a comment telling me who you think doesn't survive tonight. Because I promise you, someone doesn't. They pulled onto her mother's street with the headlights cut, rolling the last stretch in darkness. Valentina spotted the car immediately, black, idling, exhaust curling faint under the streetlight 2 buildings down from her mother's window. That's him, she whispered. Stay down. Dante's hand pressed flat against her shoulder, guiding her lower in the seat before he slipped out of the car without a sound, Marco already moving in the opposite direction to flank from the alley. Valentina watched through the gap beneath the dashboard, heart slamming so hard she could feel it in her throat, as 2 shapes moved toward the idling car in the dark. She couldn't hear what was said. She saw the driver's door open. She saw Sal Costa step out, unhurried, almost amused, hands raised in a gesture of mock surrender that didn't match the confidence in his posture at all. Then she saw the second car. It came from the opposite end of the block, headlights dark, and Valentina's stomach dropped as she realized Sal hadn't come alone, hadn't come stupid. He'd wanted Dante to find him exactly like this, had set the whole scene as bait. Dante, she breathed, but he was too far away to hear her through the glass, and the second car was already stopping, 3 men climbing out fast, and Marco was shouting something from the alley that got swallowed by the sound of a gunshot cracking the quiet street wide open. Valentina didn't remember deciding to move. 1 second she was crouched below the dashboard, obeying the one promise she'd made. The next she was scrambling for the door handle, some instinct louder than fear screaming that she could not sit in a car while gunfire erupted 20 feet away from the man who'd risked everything for her in the span of a single night. The street had gone chaotic, shouting, another shot, the screech of the second car's tires as it swung wide to box Dante in against the building. Marco was down. She couldn't tell how badly, one hand pressed to his side as he fired back toward the alley entrance. And Dante was on the ground, not moving. Sal Costa stood over him, gun still raised, smiling the exact same unhurried smile she'd heard in his voice over the phone hours earlier. And when his eyes lifted from Dante's still body and landed on Valentina, standing frozen in the open car door, that smile only widened. "There she is," Sal said, loud enough to carry across the empty street. "I was wondering when you'd come out and say hello." Every instinct told Valentina to run. Instead, her feet carried her forward, closer to the man lying motionless on the pavement, closer to the gun still raised in Sal Costa's steady hand. "Get away from him," she said, and her voice didn't break the way she expected it to. "Or what?" Sal tilted his head, almost curious, like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find interesting. "You're not armed. You're not protected. Your mother's asleep 3 buildings down with no idea her daughter's about to become the reason Dante Rossi's empire finally falls apart. What exactly do you think you're going to do, sweetheart?" "I think you wanted an audience," Valentina said, forcing herself to keep walking, slow, deliberate, close enough now to see the shallow rise and fall of Dante's chest. Alive, she realized, just barely, blood spreading dark across his shoulder where the first shot had caught him. "You said it yourself on the phone. You wanted me standing next to him when you said your piece. So say it. I'm right here." Something flickered across Sal's face. Surprise, maybe, at a woman refusing to perform fear the way he'd expected her to. It cost him half a second of attention. Half a second was enough. Marco, still down but not out, fired from the alley with the last steady breath he had in him, and Sal staggered sideways with a cry of pain, the gun skittering from his hand across the asphalt. Dante moved the instant the shot landed. Not dead, never dead, just waiting, playing still long enough for Sal's guard to drop, and drove his good shoulder into Sal's legs, taking him down hard onto the pavement. This is it. If this story had you holding your breath, this is your last chance to hit subscribe before we see how it ends. What followed happened fast and ugly. The 2 men grappling for the gun now inches from both their hands. Valentina screaming Dante's name, sirens somewhere blocks away, finally cutting through the night. Dante got his hand around the grip first. Sal froze, chest heaving, blood soaking through his own jacket from Marco's shot. "Go ahead," Sal spat, breathless, defiant even now. "Kill me in front of her. Show her exactly what kind of man she's chosen." Dante's finger tightened on the trigger, and for one long, terrible second, Valentina thought she was about to watch him become the version of himself he'd spent the whole night trying to protect her from. "Dante." Her voice cracked through the tension, quiet but certain. "Don't. Not like this. Not with me standing here." He didn't lower the gun immediately. She watched the war happen behind his eyes, 6 years of restraint, a lifetime of violence as the only language his world respected, and underneath all of it, the plain fact that she was standing 8 feet away watching him decide who he wanted to be. He pulled the gun back, struck Sal once, hard, across the temple with the butt of it instead, enough to still him, not enough to kill him. "You don't get to die easy," Dante said, voice rough with pain and adrenaline both. "You get to sit in a cell and think about the fact that it was her mercy that kept you breathing tonight, not mine." Red and blue lights washed across the street as 2 cars Valentina hadn't known were his own pulled up fast, men spilling out to secure Sal before the real police arrived, the kind of quiet, efficient cleanup that told her this wasn't the first time Dante's world had bled into a public street and needed to disappear again before morning. Then his knees buckled, blood loss finally catching up to him, and Valentina was there before he hit the ground, arms wrapping around him, taking his weight against her own body without a second of hesitation. Hey, look at me." Her hands were shaking, pressed against the wound at his shoulder, but her voice stayed steady, an anchor in the chaos around them. "You don't get to almost die tonight and not tell me the rest of what you were going to say back in that kitchen." Dante laughed, weak, pained, achingly real. "Bossy for a maid. I'm about to be a lot Bossier once you're stitched up and can't argue with me." "Marco," Dante rasped, "get her mother's building secured and get me a car that isn't covered in blood." "On it, boss," Marco managed, grinning despite the wound at his side, already reaching for his phone. Weeks later, The version of this story that made it into the family's conversation was much smaller than the truth. A break-in near her mother's building, resolved quietly, no real details offered and none demanded, the way things always seemed to resolve in Dante's world once he decided they should. Valentina walked into her cousin's rescheduled engagement dinner on Dante's arm, his shoulders still healing beneath a perfectly tailored jacket, and when her mother pulled her aside in the hallway, eyes bright, she didn't ask about boyfriends or timelines or embarrassment anymore. "He looks at you," her mother whispered, "like you're the only reason he walks into a room." "He is," Valentina said, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she believed it completely. Not a joke whispered into an empty kitchen, not a desperate wish for tomorrow, but something real, chosen, and hers. Dante caught her eye across the room and smiled, the kind of smile his own men rarely got to see. And Valentina understood then that the girl who'd once needed a boyfriend by tomorrow had somehow ended up with a man who would burn down entire empires rather than let anyone make her feel small again. If this story kept you until the very last line, hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with someone who needs to believe a love this fierce still exists. There's another story just like this one waiting for you next.